This is The Silent Truth, where real stories unfold in whispers, and the truth speaks louder than words. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, sit back, and listen closely. Because today's story is about a father's final test, a son's greed, and a twist that no one saw coming. Let's begin. It started on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Arthur, a retired man in his late 60s, sat by the window of his small but cozy apartment overlooking the city park. He loved that view, children playing, the chatter of families, the smell of roasted coffee from the cafe downstairs. It was his peace, his comfort, his home for the last 20 years. But that peace was about to break. Arthur had one son, Mark. They hadn't been close for years. Not because of a fight, but because of something more subtle. Distance. Indifference. Time. Mark was 35, ambitious, successful, at least that's what he wanted people to believe. He worked in real estate, drove a sleek car, and wore suits that cost more than Arthur's monthly pension. But underneath that polish, there was something missing, a heart. For months, Mark hadn't visited. Not a single call on Arthur's birthday. Not even a message on holidays. So when Mark suddenly called one afternoon, Arthur's face lit up like a child's. "Dad." Mark's voice was unusually warm. "Hey, how are you?" Arthur smiled, his old heart softening instantly. "Mark. I'm good, son. It's been a while. How's work?" "Oh, busy, as always. You know how it is. But listen, I was actually thinking of coming by tomorrow if that's okay. Maybe have lunch together." Arthur didn't hesitate. "Of course. I'll make your favorite, roast chicken and mashed potatoes." He hung up, smiling. He had no idea that the next day would begin the unraveling of everything he thought he knew about his son. The next morning, Arthur woke up early. He cleaned the small kitchen, polished the silverware, and even ironed his best shirt. At noon, the doorbell rang. There stood Mark, tall, charming, with a wide smile and a bouquet of flowers. "Dad, you look great." Arthur laughed. "Well, I had to look good for my successful son." They hugged, and for a moment, Arthur felt like the world had rewound 20 years. The laughter, the warmth, it felt like family again. But after lunch, things changed. Mark leaned back in his chair, cleared his throat, and said, "Dad, I actually wanted to talk to you about something important." Arthur smiled. "Of course, son. What's on your mind?" Mark hesitated, then said, "You know your apartment here, it's a prime spot. Prices are going up in this neighborhood. You could sell it for a lot." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Sell it? Why would I do that? This is my home." Mark smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I get that. But think about it, you could move to a smaller place, maybe near the countryside. Peaceful, cheap, quiet. And with the money from this apartment, you could live comfortably, or maybe help me a bit with some investments." Arthur's face fell slightly. "Help you?" Mark nodded, pretending to be casual. "Yeah, I'm expanding my business. I need a down payment for a big property deal. I promise, it's a sure thing. You'd actually be helping both of us. You could live with me for a while if you sell this place." Arthur looked out the window, silent. He wasn't stupid. He knew what was happening. Mark wasn't visiting out of love. He was visiting out of need. But Arthur didn't say that. Instead, he said softly, "I'll think about it, Mark." Over the next few weeks, Mark became a regular visitor again. He'd bring groceries, fix small things, even help Arthur with errands. It almost felt genuine. Almost. But every visit somehow circled back to the apartment. "Dad, you could have a better life somewhere else. Dad, this place is too much for you. Dad, just trust me on this deal." Arthur smiled and nodded, but inside, he was observing. Then one evening, a letter arrived. It was from the housing authority, a notice about potential redevelopment plans in the area. If that happened, apartment owners would receive a generous compensation offer. Arthur read the letter slowly. So that was it. That's why Mark suddenly cared. The next weekend, Mark visited again. Arthur greeted him calmly. "Come in, son. I've made tea." They sat. "I got the redevelopment notice," Arthur said. Mark froze for a second. "Oh, you got that, huh?" Arthur nodded. Seems like they'll be offering a good payout. Mark leaned forward eagerly. Exactly. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Dad. This is the perfect time to sell. We could move fast before everyone else does. Arthur watched him carefully. Mark blinked. I mean, you. But, you know, I could handle the paperwork for you. Make sure you get the best price. Arthur smiled faintly. You've really thought this through. Mark grinned. Of course. I just want what's best for you. Arthur stared at his son. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then he said, all right. I'll do it. Mark almost jumped from his chair. Really? Arthur nodded. But I want to handle the paperwork myself. I'll transfer it to your name after the sale. Mark's eyes gleamed. That's perfect, Dad. You won't regret it. 2 months passed. The apartment sold quickly, for nearly $500,000. Arthur received the payment and quietly transferred the ownership to Mark, just as he promised. Then, one day later, Arthur packed his few belongings into 2 suitcases and left. He told Mark he'd move into a small rental outside the city. Mark didn't even offer to help. He was too busy celebrating his new investment. Within days, Mark listed the apartment for resale, at nearly double the price. Everything seemed perfect. Until one morning, he arrived at the building, and found the door sealed. A red notice hung from the frame. Property acquisition suspended. Fraudulent transfer under investigation. Mark's stomach dropped. He rushed to his father's old lawyer, furious. What is this? My father signed the papers. It's my property. The lawyer, a calm old man with tired eyes, looked up. Your father didn't sign anything illegal. But you did. What are you talking about? Mark shouted. The lawyer slid a folder across the desk. The contract you submitted was altered. You claimed your father was mentally unfit and that you were his legal guardian. That's fraud, Mark. Mark's hands shook. I didn't. The lawyer interrupted. Your father filed a report last week. He knew what you were planning. And he left the city before the investigation began. Mark's face went pale. He set me up. The lawyer sighed. He gave you a choice, Mark. You chose greed. Meanwhile, a few miles away, Arthur sat quietly at a small seaside cafe, sipping his coffee. He had no apartment now. No fortune. But there was peace. He had sold the apartment himself weeks before Mark thought he did, for a lower price, but under his own name. The transfer he made to Mark. That was a test. A fake document. A trap. Arthur had suspected his son's intentions long before. So he spoke with his lawyer, who advised him to protect himself. Together, they created a legal decoy, a mock transfer contract that would immediately flag any fraudulent edits. When Mark tried to alter it, the trap was triggered. Arthur didn't hate his son. But he couldn't let him destroy what he had built. Days turned into weeks. Mark's real estate license was suspended. His accounts were frozen under investigation. The apartment, seized temporarily by the housing authority. And Arthur. He quietly rented a small cottage by the sea. Every morning, he walked along the shore, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Sometimes he thought of Mark, of his little boy building sandcastles by the beach years ago, laughing without care. He missed that version of him. But the man Mark had become, the one who saw his father as an obstacle instead of family, that man had to face the consequences. Then one rainy night, there was a knock on Arthur's door. He opened it, and there stood Mark. Soaked, shivering, defeated. His clothes were wrinkled, his eyes tired. He had lost everything. Dad, he said softly. Arthur didn't speak. Mark stepped inside, dripping water onto the floor. I didn't know where else to go. Arthur looked at him quietly. Then he turned and fetched a towel. Dry yourself, he said. Mark sat down, tears mixing with rain. You knew I was trying to take it from you. Arthur nodded slowly. Yes. Mark looked up, ashamed. Why didn't you stop me sooner? Why let me destroy everything? Arthur sighed deeply. Because you needed to see who you'd become. Words wouldn't have changed you, Mark. You had to lose what you worshipped, to see what really matters. Mark buried his face in his hands. I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. Arthur nodded. I believe you. But sorry doesn't fix everything. It's a start, but you'll have to rebuild. From nothing. Mark looked up. Can I stay here? Just for a while. Arthur hesitated, then said, you can stay tonight. Tomorrow, we'll find a way forward. Together, if you're ready. Mark nodded, tears streaming down his face. That night, Arthur lay awake, listening to the sound of rain against the window. He didn't feel angry anymore. Just sad, and a little hopeful. Because sometimes, losing everything is the only way to find yourself again. Months passed. Mark started working again, not in real estate, but in construction. He wanted to understand what it meant to build something real. Arthur watched quietly, helping where he could. Their relationship was fragile, but it was mending, one small act at a time. Every Sunday, they'd walk along the beach together. Arthur would tell stories from his youth, and Mark would listen. Really listen. And one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mark said, Dad, I get it now. The apartment wasn't the treasure. You were. Arthur smiled faintly. No, son. The treasure was always what you choose to build, not what you take. Years later, Arthur passed away peacefully in his sleep. When Mark went through his belongings, he found a sealed envelope with his name. Inside was a single note. Son, the home I gave you wasn't built of bricks. It was built of truth. Guard it well, Dad. Mark folded the letter, tears falling silently. He never sold another property again. Instead, he used his father's savings, which he discovered had been quietly set aside for him after all, to build affordable homes for families in need. He called the project Arthur's Haven. Because that's what his father's love had always been, a haven. Life has a way of teaching lessons the hard way. Sometimes, the home we chase isn't a place, it's a person. And sometimes, by trying to own it, we lose it completely. Mark learned that the true inheritance wasn't the apartment. It was the wisdom that only loss could give. And that's the silent truth. Outro music fades in, same soft piano melody. If you were moved by this story, share it with someone who might need the reminder that love is worth more than any property. Thank you for watching The Silent Truth, where every story hides a whisper of reality.